Yes guys, welcome back to another Fantasy Football Fix YouTube video. My name is FPL Nacho, and in this video we are going to be discussing Game Week 32, and in particular, those free hit drafts. I know a lot of FPL managers out there have decided to activate their free hit ahead of the upcoming blank game week, so this video is going to be all for you guys. And importantly, if you haven't activated your free hit, do not worry about it. We're also going to be discussing long-term transfers that is going to benefit you going forward, so you're not missing out. So guys, if I can ask you to hit that subscribe button, it'll be massively appreciated, and drop a like on the video if you do enjoy it. So without further ado, let's get started. So first up, I thought it would be a really good opportunity for us to look at those Liverpool defenders. Now, to remind ourselves, Liverpool have a fantastic home fixture against Nottingham Forest in Game Week 32. And at the time of recording, they are currently 5-1 up against Leeds in their Monday night fixture in Game Week 31. So although we have not seen a clean sheet from Liverpool, we have seen an assist from Trent Alexander-Arnold, which is always promising when we are looking at building our teams around these sorts of players. Now, in terms of Liverpool themselves, I do want to quickly say that I do view Mo Salah an essential pick in your free hit 32 teams, and also a fantastic long-term transfer if you do not have your free hit at hand. I think he ticks all the boxes going forward: guaranteed game time, fantastic fixtures, and importantly, a captaincy option in Game Week 32. And it always helps the fact that at the time of recording, he has scored a brace against Leeds, so that always does help reaffirm your decision making. But coming back to Liverpool defenders, we are looking at right now Van Dijk, Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. I would like to say that Konate is also an option. However, I would only view him as a long-term transfer if you really don't have the money available, as I really do think Van Dijk, Robertson and Trent are worth their additional funds, in particular someone like Trent from his underlying numbers. 0.32 expected assists is clear ahead of the likes of Robertson and Van Dijk. However, Van Dijk does lead the way for expected goals per 90 at 0.14. We see that in that Liverpool team, that all set pieces are basically targeted at Van Dijk. And it's no surprise that his expected goals exceeds the likes of both Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, based on the bonus points, Van Dijk and Trent actually lead the way over Robertson. Robertson only at 0.41 per 90, and that is reflective on his underlying numbers, and also his actual output from assists haven't necessarily been at the level that we've seen in previous seasons. Now, in terms of looking forward to the upcoming game weeks, Trent leads the way based on projected points and also expected FPL points per 90 minutes. So I think on the face of it, when we're looking at these Liverpool defenders, I think we always knew that Trent Alexander-Arnold, if you have the money available, is the option to go for. I think the real question is, do we double down on the Liverpool defence? As I discussed, I think Mo Salah is an essential pick in your midfield. So the big discussion is, Mo Salah and Trent I'm going to view as locks for our free hit team, and also fantastic long-term transfers. But the third choice is the one that's up for grabs. I think if we go for the defence, I think we can almost say that Robertson and Van Dijk's minutes are almost guaranteed unless you were to get a surprise Tsimikas appearance at left back. However, I think the front line offer high risk, high reward. Gakpo and Jota have both been on the score sheet in Game Week 31, but we do know that Luis Diaz, Firmino are all waiting in the wings alongside Darwin Núñez to take minutes away from these forwards. So I really do think that it is a case of, what do you want as an FPL manager? If you want that a high upside pick, you go for Trent, you go for Salah, and you go for one of the midfield or forward options. If you want to go for what we describe as guaranteed minutes and also an investment in an attacking asset from a defensive perspective, I think you go for Robertson alongside Trent, and you accept that the fixture against Nottingham Forest is probably the best possible home fixture you can have from a defensive perspective. And although Liverpool from a clean sheet side of things haven't been consistent, you would like to think that against this Nottingham Forest team that are the lowest scoring team away from home, we could see that magical return of a clean sheet and attacking returns for both Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. I like Van Dijk as a pick, but only really if you do have not enough money available to go to Robertson. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll be really interested to know, in particular, if you are going for double Liverpool attack, maybe a combination of both Mo Salah and a Jota in your forward line. Please do let me know in the comments. So next up, let's move on to the midfielders ahead of Game Week 32. Now, we've gone for a bit of a difference here with our midfielders, as I do think that a lot of managers are going down the same direction. I think, as I mentioned, Mo Salah is a lock for our FPL teams for a free hit. And I also view the double up in Arsenal midfield all but essential. Saka plus Martinelli would be my recommendation with their brilliant home fixture against Southampton in that Friday evening game. I think it's very hard to look past a double up in the Arsenal midfield. Therefore, because the options available in front line and playing a 3 at the back most likely, we only have one more midfielder slot available. And this is going to come down to how much money you have available to yourself. Now, as I discussed, if you want to go down the route of someone like a Gakpo at Liverpool, then that is definitely an option for you. And he is basically priced in the mid category of what we see on our screens here at about 7.9 million. But in this example here, I've decided to mix it up and go for a mixture of budget options in Eze and Billing and a premium option or mid-premium option in James Maddison. Now, I'd argue here that Eze is the man of the moment right now. Under Roy Hodgson, we have seen his stats elevate over what were under Patrick Vieira. In the last 2 game weeks, Eze has produced 0.9 XG and also 0.2 XA in 2 fixtures. Now, based on his per 90 since the World Cup, they haven't necessarily been as impressive. 0.23 expected goals per 90 and 0.1 expected assists per 90. But we have to remember that he was used few and far between under Patrick Vieira. Under Roy Hodgson, even though it is such a small sample size, we are seeing him almost being deployed as the talisman in this Crystal Palace team, and he is thriving under that position. Now, to remind you, Crystal Palace have a fantastic home game against Everton, who did, I would argue, capitulate in their 3-1 loss against Fulham in game week 31. So I do think this is a really good fixture for Crystal Palace. We feel like they're playing with a lot of freedom, and giving the likes of Elise and Eze the license to be creative and the driving force in this Crystal Palace team. And against an Everton team who are fighting for their lives, while Everton we would expect to put up a fight, I'm not seeing the defensive displays that I would have expected under Sean Dyche to suggest that Crystal Palace can't score against this team. So with 5.5 million, I really do think Eze is a fantastic differential if you want to go down that route in game week 32. Looking at the other alternative at that price range is going to be Billing at Bournemouth. Now, I do like the other Bournemouth options available around that 5 million bracket, but I think Billing, because of the guaranteed minutes, and just what we've seen over the last few game weeks, suggests that he is the best option if you want to go for a Bournemouth midfielder. Now again, Bournemouth have a good fixture as well at home against West Ham. Are we seeing a resurgence in West Ham? Potentially. They obviously picked up against Arsenal and they've had a few consistent results prior to that. But we do need to remember that West Ham are playing on Thursday night in a second leg in their Europa League tie against Genk. Could we see tired legs potentially against Bournemouth, who are still fighting for their lives? Potentially. And I think that's why Billing is an interesting option if you really don't have the funds available in your free hit drafts. 0.19 XG, 0.14 XA per 90, and 0.39 big chances per 90. Nothing to scream about, but for someone at 5.2 million, really solid underlying numbers. And realistically, of course, when we're comparing him to the likes of James Maddison, it is chalk and cheese when we're looking at FPL pedigree and also the underlying numbers. But we need to remember what this asset is going to accommodate for our teams. For example, if you go down the route of Maddison, you might not be able to get Harry Kane into your free hit teams. However, if you really view Harry Kane a real essential in your team, then maybe Billing is the one to go for as a bit of a cash cow for you to enable that premium option in Harry Kane. It's worth noting I do not view Harry Kane as a essential in the free hit draft, so I just want to put it out there. Now moving on to the final midfielder pick in Maddison. 8.1 million. Leicester right now are struggling. They were really, I wouldn't necessarily say poor against Man City, but very easy to score against. But we saw in those last 20 minutes, Maddison and Leicester start to show what they can do from an offensive perspective. But I want to say, of course, game state is a massive thing in football. And Man City did make a raft of changes which did naturally affect the flow of the game. I don't think Leicester would have had those chances if Man City didn't make those positional changes and also weren't in a 3-0 luxury position. That said, if a player and a midfielder was to go off this game week, I really do think Maddison could be that one. They have Wolves at home, which is a massive game for Leicester, and Dean Smith in his first home game in charge is going to want to see a reaction from these Leicester players. And there's no reason to suggest that these players aren't going to be fighting tooth and nail for Dean Smith, the new appointment at home in this crunch match. And if any player is going to step up, I really do think it is going to be James Maddison. He is still the talisman of this Leicester team. And I understand Leicester are an incredibly hard team to predict right now. But I do think if we want to go for a punt, somebody like James Maddison is the go-to option if you can afford him at 8.1 million. His underlying numbers are fantastic. And also if you're looking at a long-term option, I wouldn't necessarily rush to bring him in as a Leicester option. I can't tell you long-term, but as a punt, I really do like James Maddison in those free hit teams. So to conclude, Maddison would be my choice if you were going for a free hit and you could enable it. Otherwise, long term, and you weren't free hitting, I think Eze is a fantastic transfer for your teams, leaving additional funds available to upgrade elsewhere in your squads. But again, guys, please do let me know in the comments which one you'd prefer in your free hit team. So last step, let's move on to those forwards ahead of the free hit. And in this choice, I've decided to go for Solanke, Gabriel Jesus, and Harry Kane. A completely different spectrum of prices here, with Dominic Solanke being at 5.5 all the way up to the premium price of Harry Kane at 11.7. Now, as I said, I've been discussing about the players that I do deem essential if you are free hitting, and I am going to put Ollie Watkins into that category. I would argue that he does have quite a tricky fixture away against Brentford, but what we're seeing right now in Ollie Watkins and with Unai Emery's Aston Villa is not only a player, but a team that are in real good form right now. And we've seen what happens to those non-owners when Ollie Watkins does score. It really is a big impact on your FPL rank. And I think right now, knowing that a lot of managers that aren't free hitting are going to have Ollie Watkins, I don't think you need to go against Ollie Watkins this game week. Therefore, I think one forward spot is already taken. It's going to now become all about how much you want to spend on the additional slots. Now, Harry Kane, as we know, is a phenomenal FPL option, but I would argue he has the toughest fixture of all the forwards away against Newcastle. Now, of course, Newcastle played really poorly against Aston Villa, although one would argue Aston Villa were just very good on their day. But I would expect Harry Kane to have a tough test against that Newcastle defence at Newcastle. If it was at Spurs, it might be a different story. But look at the underlying numbers for Harry Kane post-World Cup. You start to really appreciate what a phenomenal forward he is, because the numbers that he is getting are not anything to scream about. XG per 90, 0.47 is not that good. And expected assists at 0.12, but the one that I'm astonished about is the big chances per 90. 0.69 big chances per 90 is terrible. For a player that is right now in the top 3 top goal scorers in the Premier League, it's ridiculous that he has been able to score the chances he's been getting, as clearly the system is not working right now at Spurs, and he's not getting the big chances that for someone like Gabriel Jesus is getting in that Arsenal team. When you compare it, Jesus' big chances per 90, 2.57. If you were to put a Harry Kane into a team like Arsenal, God forbid how many goals he'll be scoring in the Premier League season. But we know of Harry Kane, any place, anytime, he can get on the score sheet. And you know, based on these 3 forwards, he's likely to be the highest owned forward in Game Week 32. So if you're protecting rank, maybe going Harry Kane is the route to go for. But I don't feel like he's essential for FPL drafts and a good opportunity to swing against Harry Kane this game week. Now, the one that I really do like is Gabriel Jesus. A lot of managers out there probably haven't owned him since the early parts of the season, as he's been injured for so long, and a very difficult transfer for us to make just in our general moves because of the forwards available like Haaland, like Watkins with their current form. But if we're looking at a 1 week punt, I really do think Gabriel Jesus ticks all the boxes. He's a good price point, 8.1 million first and foremost, and he's only 10% owned by live teams, so he still is in that category of being a very, very good differential that could impact your rank. And looking at the underlying numbers, I want to say that he has played limited minutes in comparison to both Solanke and Kane, but the numbers are still fantastic. XG per 91.29 is ridiculous, and we've already touched on the big chances. But I also do think if you don't have a free hit available, Gabriel Jesus is a fantastic long-term hold if you want to go down that route. Predicted to score in the next 3 game weeks, 15.1 points is fantastic reading there for someone like Gabriel Jesus. One thing I would say is he has been coming off slightly early in games, maybe just to manage his workload. We might see his minutes incrementally increase as the game weeks progress. But in terms of starts, I would not be worried about Gabriel Jesus, and I would go as far to say he is a lock in my current free hit team. Last up, Dominic Solanke, the man of the moment in Game Week 31, the one who ran Spurs ragged. 5.5 million, the real enabler if you need it in your teams. Really solid underlying numbers that you can see on your screen here. And I really do think that the combination of maybe avoiding Harry Kane and going for Watkins, Jesus and Solanke is a viable move for your FPL teams, and one that I am currently considering right now, and how my front line is looking for the free hit draft. Bournemouth themselves have been looking very good recently, and Solanke is actually playing alongside some very creative players that they've been bringing in January. Someone like Otare, who's looked very good in his limited minutes in that Bournemouth team. And with their fixture at home against West Ham, I really do think it is a good fixture for them to attack them based on their second leg Europa League. We could get some tired legs. So to sum it up, I think Gabriel Jesus is a lock for me in our free hit teams, and I think he should be one that you really do need to consider. Solanke is the best of the bunch if you're looking for an enabler. The numbers are very good and the fixture's fantastic. Harry Kane I'm not as bullish on, but we know with his pedigree, anytime, any place, he can get those goals. So I feel like if you want to cover yourself from an ownership perspective, Harry Kane is a fantastic pick just to keep yourself ticking along this game week. So that's going to wrap up today's video, guys. I really do hope it has provided some value and helped answer some of your free hit and long-term transfer questions. If you have any additional, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them over the coming days. And as always, if you can, drop a like and hit that subscribe button. It is always appreciated, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.